And I said, Nathan McKinnon, isn't that just Rocky Mountain Morgan Geeky? It's the Guard Level Podcast.
This is hockey right here.
Bruins! Whoa! 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 Whoa!
Welcome in, Garden Level Pod, special Sunday edition of the Garden Level Podcast here on Rogue Media Sports. I'm Stuart, Dan Conlon here. You can find us on Twitter, on TikTok, dropping all kinds of. It's actually become quite a bit of Leafs shit talking, which is always nice. But Dan, we did not get 2 feet of snow this weekend. How was your body reacting to that?
Still sore. I wasn't able to drive at all just because my car was underneath 5 feet of snow. But instead of going to the gym, I was shoveling, and now my back hurts. I live in Southeast, so there's currently a war going on for parking spots. I'm sure you've seen the videos of that. So it's a war zone out in Southie right now, and you just gotta play it safe. Make sure you don't move a old toilet or a parking or a lounge chair and take someone's spots.
Or else. Yeah, we might be done driving for the winter. We might. So we have street parking. We kind of like a residential street. And so we have the permit and everything, but we technically aren't allowed to park in our own driveway. It's a 3 triple-decker. But it's now in the front of the driveway, like boxed in. It's not coming out anytime soon because half our parking spots were taken. They just plow it up to the side and they say, okay, those aren't parking spots until it melts. It's not going to melt. It's not going to melt for a while. So we might just be done driving for the winter. But I'll tell you what, Fraser Minten isn't done driving play. Let's talk about the Bruins. Kind of a rough, weird loss against the Rangers last week, then bounced back, sort of. They blew a 2-goal lead against one of the worst teams in hockey in Nashville, and then came back and won it in overtime with a play that had people talking about like those Soviet teams of the 1970s with their constant movement and how slick it was. Then a pretty convincing win over the Flyers as well. So, Dan, I mean, you take a stretch in the beginning of the week where they're actually not playing that well. You know, it's the weird travel to and from New York on the 1-game road trip. It's the back-to-back. They end up getting, the win after blowing the lead the night before. What was your take on just the fact that they didn't play really well either of those games?
I think
and they didn't lose both of them.
Yeah, they didn't lose both of them.
Yeah.
But honestly, every point's important right now. You see how close the standings are, especially in the Atlantic Division and the Eastern Conference. The Bruins are a top 11 team in hockey right now in points, and they're currently the 5th best team in their division. So when you hear that, you're happy with every point. But when you're playing against bad teams, those are just 2 points you got to have. Especially with giving up the lead against the Rangers and the Preds. The Bruins are a very good team after 40 with holding leads. They are extremely good, and they are 24-0-2 when leading after 40 minutes. And that is just very impressive. I think that goes to the coaching, also the players as well. Their third period, they're showing up. And one of those players that shows up is Fraser Minten in the third period. He's one of the clutchest players in the NHL.
Like, he is a huge part of this. We've been talking a lot of Fraser Minten lately, but I think it's justified. And I see the stat here of 24-0-2 and leading after 40 that you just talked about. That might be the most surprising stat of the year for this team. There's another one that they're kind of on pace for that we'll talk about in a second. But this is crazy based on the team we saw last year. And by the way, the Bruins, with that win over the Flyers, surpassed their win total from last year on January, 29th. They surpassed their win total from last year. But how many games last year, Dan, where the other team pulled the goalie with 2 minutes left, they scored the game-tying goal and won it in overtime? It just felt like we were seeing that every single week. And now here's this team, which personnel-wise isn't that much different. Not that much, especially from the end of the year last year. And here they are 24-0-2 when leading after 40. These guys can shut down games.
They do. And, they play well in the first 40, and then they change their style of play and, wear and tear the other team. And I think that just goes to show, like I said earlier, very good coaching. I think the Predators game was very impressive after you learn what they had to go through to get from New York to Boston. That video of the players showing up before the game, just miserable, like they just came in on the red eye. I think it goes to show their
Red eye for a
strength.
10 a.m. meeting. Like, that's what it looked like, man.
Yeah, yeah. So that's just a very impressive stat, and a stat you want to see if you're a Bruins fan. Like you said, last year they were losing those games. To put it in baseball terms, they were tied or winning, and Jordan Hicks came in the pitch. So
Hey, people want Jordan Hicks, man. People, I'm hearing that.
apparently,
People want Jordan Hicks.
yeah, they gotta wow us, but he is
And
havable.
to further put that into hockey terms, Jordan Hicks is like what Casey Mittelstadt was at the beginning of the year. Not right now. Not right now.
Yeah.
But to me, what this stat points out to me is something that they have talked about for a couple of years now, specifically the last like 2 seasons. And they talked about it again before this year. And I'm like, man, you got to prove it at this point, because last year you guys said this all the time, and you weren't this. This stat here shows me they are actually tough to play against. Like, how many friggin' times have we heard that over the last 20 months or so, Dan? Like, we just want a team that's tough to play against. That team last year was not tough to play against. 24-0-2 when leading after 40, that is tough to play against.
That's what we want to see, especially when it comes to playoff time or when it comes down the stretch. The games are going to get tighter and closer, and when you're in tight games, you want to close it out. They've got some good goaltending in third period too. So,
Yeah.
When you're talking about playoffs and can this team make a run? When you see a stat like that, that's just very encouraging, and stat you like to see.
Maybe the most impressive thing about this Bruins team this year is the depth scoring. Like, we had the question before the season, outside of David Pastrnak, who is going to score 20? And I think we were all thinking, okay, Geeky probably should, but there was the shooting percentage thing last year. Did he just get hot for 1 year? Like, what if he's not on a line with Pastrnak all the time? Is he more of a 35 goal scorer or an 18 goal scorer? Geeky's over the 30 mark again. And now the Bruins are on pace to do something they haven't done in almost 50 years. How about this stat from Court Lalonde? They're on pace to have 8 20-goal scorers this season. 8. That'll be the most they've had since 78 when they set the NHL record with 11. By the way, an absurd number. That's a crazy number.
Crazy.
But for this Bruins team to have 8 20-goal scorers, you've got improved goaltending. You're good in the third period. You're still taking a lot of penalties. But this, to me, would be the reason you make the playoffs, if you make the playoffs, as they sit in the second wild card once again, is to have that kind of depth scoring, Dan.
Yeah, and no one could have predicted this. I think obviously before the season, we're like, oh, this is gonna be a defense and goaltending oriented team. And to have that kind of, if you were to tell us that, I mean, we did some bold predictions in October about what's going on, and I think I mentioned Vezina for Swayman as one of mine, but 8 20-goal scorers was not even something I thought about. I probably wouldn't even said 5 or maybe 4, but
I would have been happy
guys.
with 4 or 5. Yeah, I would have been really happy, honestly.
But yeah, you see a lot. You're getting it from if you have 8 20-goal scorers, you have guys contributing all around the lineup. Geeky, like you said, we weren't sure what he would do. His percentage was very high. We thought that was going to come down, but now he reached 30 goals again, which is encouraging. Hopefully, he can get 40. Apasta made a joke about that, like you don't get to save the puck till you hit 40. So I think he'll hit 40. He's got to stay hot for a few more, for a bigger stretch now. But it sucks kind of because the Olympic break is a week from now. So a team that's doing very well is going to have to cool off for a bit. But hopefully they stay that way when they come back. But I saw a cool stat. I think Geeky, Bergeron, Pasta, and Marchand were the 4 most recent back-to-back 30-goal scorers for the Bruins And the person before that was Mr. Glenn Murray back in the early
Yes.
2000s.
Yes.
Anytime we have a chance to mention Glenn Murray, you got to do that. So uh, when Geeky's name is being tossed in the same group as Glenn
Rarefied
Murray,
air. Yeah.
that means you're doing a good job. So yeah, goal scoring all around, which we didn't think was going to happen before the season.
And that's what's crazy. The 8 guys who are in double digits and are on pace for 20. Casey Mittelstadt, Elias Lindholm, who's obviously hurt right now, Hustadinov, Arvidsson, Minten, Zaka, and then your big 2 guys. I mean, if you told me all of those guys were even on pace for 20 at this point in the season, even on pace for it, I'd be like, man, they are really like kind of all the ping pong balls are going in their favor, so to speak, to use a draft analogy. Like everything is breaking their way. And they do have an eye on the NHL draft still, which is great, in part because with one of their projected 20 goal scorers as a 21-year-old center, they did also get a first-round pick. We've been talking about him a lot on the pod, Dan. Like he's kind of taking over this podcast alongside you and myself. But Fraser Minten is such a monster, dude. And like earlier in the season, it was people being like, oh, this is Michael Bunting all over again. When Leafs fans were trying to tell us he was this great rookie and he's going to win the Calder. And, we were kind of justifying it on the show of like, I know the points numbers aren't there, but watch this kid play. Now the points numbers are there. Like this kid is red hot the last month.
It's crazy. And the last 15 games, to be exact, he's scored 8 goals, 8 assists. He's a plus 15. I think does he have the highest plus minus on the team, or is that Aspro or Isadora?
It is. I was just gonna say you're not gonna believe it, but it's Aspro. He's one more. He's at 21. Fraser Mitten's at a plus 20.
Exactly. Just
And
like we all
Nikita
had it.
Zadorov, your leading penalty minutes guy, is a plus 18, man. That's great. He's not out on the ice for shorthanded. But again, Fraser Minten at a plus 20 shouldn't be ignored. That's a third line center on a team that finished 15th in the conference last year. He's 21. He's a plus 20 on this team.
And we knew that was going to be his strength. We knew he was a good two-way player. And that's what, Sturm liked about him. That's what I think he loves about him the most. He said it was a steal that they got him. I think he was just chirping Toronto a little bit in that interview, but it's just good to see his offensive capability being shown now, because that's the one question mark we had about him. We knew he was okay. At worst, he's a third line center, but now he's getting time he got a little time on the first line when Lindholm got injured in the third period. He's getting time on the second line last game. He was on the third line when Janelle and Cass, like when they were playing their best hockey. So you could put him anywhere in the lineup. He's getting power play time too. He might be on the first unit tonight with all the injuries, but he was on the second unit for the past few games. So it's good to see him getting thrown into it, and you could plug him in anywhere. He says all the right things too. He does everything right. He says everything right. He just says, someone asked him if he wants to be a top 6 guy. He's like, just put me in anywhere. I just want to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
So he says everything too. Like there's nothing you can really hate about him. Like I feel like we should just make I love Fraser Minten shirts. I think those would do pretty well. I think he reminds me of that guy playing the Super Bowl on Sunday.
Yeah. Fraser Minten, Drake May, like what's the difference, man? At this point, both icons in the city, both have statues coming. Like I get that. I did want to say with that line you were talking about, we've talked so much about the second line, that Zaka, Mittelstadt, Arvidsson. And honestly, we should. Like that's been a huge key to this Bruins team being as hot as they've been the last month, was that line really developing and getting their chemistry and being the depth scoring. Like I have been so impressed with Casey Mittelstadt recently. And I thought that game they played against the Flyers on Thursday was like, I don't know if this is an oxymoron, but like prime Casey Mittelstadt. Like just he's not going to give you much defensively. He's never going to. But the nice offensive plays, the good transition player he can be. He had a nice little slip pass through the neutral zone on Minten's goal. He obviously put some flair on his own goal to put it on the backhand, put it top shelf. That line is rocked. And Arvidsson keeps scoring for them, it keeps developing, making offense for them. And that line has been great. That Zaka, Arvidsson, Mittelstadt line. and then Zacha gets hurt, and you put Minten on that line during the game on Thursday night. And how about this? In that game, when it was Minten, Arvidsson, and the other guy, Mittelstadt, who I just said I was so impressed with. When it was those three guys, they outshot Philadelphia 13-1 in shot attempts in that game. They suffocated them, Dan. They created offense, and they didn't let them even see the net. Like and I think, again, that shows Fraser Minten, because that's not the matchup line, the defensive line third. That's the third line. That's the one Minten's usually playing on, where you're trying to get a little heavier, trying to be a little bit more defensive minded. But what we're now learning is whatever line you put Fraser Minten on can be your matchup shutdown line.
It can be. And I'm not sure. I know you mentioned how impressed you are at Mittelstadt, and obviously that line with Arvidsson and Zacha. Has your thoughts changed at all about your long-term future of Casey Mittelstadt? Like, is that someone, he obviously is under contract for next year too. You know, people have said, oh, with this, how this deadline the market's looking, like maybe you get a first for Mittelstadt. With how well the second line has been, like, do you still want to sell off that second line and get some picks for them? Or are you like, hey, this is our best line this year, like we gotta need them for the playoffs?
That's a really good question.
It's a tough one.
That is really tough, because like man, I do believe in like those middle six, like those lines being together. And it took a while for them to get clicking, but and I have liked Mittelstadt recently. But that said, I think Mittelstadt is replaceable. Like, I think you can get someone in here at a smaller number, because he's what, 5'7", I think,
Yeah,
or
around
6'7", and Zacha's
5'7".
5'7". One of them, they're 1 million off. And Mittelstadt's higher. I think, and I guess I don't have any names right now, but I think you can get his production at a smaller number and potentially get some, a draft capital for him. I don't know if you get a first and a player of that caliber. You're probably just settling on a first. And this might seem crazy, but maybe the Bruins are thinking, we can fill that void with either a Matthew Poitras or, at the end of the season, a James Higgins, and putting him on a line. Do I expect James Higgins to just come into the league and be what Casey Mittelstadt's been the last couple of weeks? Maybe not, but like, we've seen guys hop right into play. McAvoy was excellent for them in the playoffs when they brought him up against Ottawa. So maybe I would still listen to. I'll say this: I would still listen to offers on Mittelstadt. Would you? And Arvidsson would be in that boat too, right? Like, Arvidsson's going to be another guy that's brought up. Would you still listen?
I would definitely listen, because you got to look at, the long term. I'm always about the long term over, potentially just making the first round this year and losing. But if someone blows you away, if someone offers you a first for Mittelstadt, I think that's just a no-brainer. And you got time now. Like, deadline's in March. Like, I know the freeze is coming up, but this is why, calling up Poitras right now to see how he plays. And he had a pretty good game last game. He didn't, register on the score sheet, but he looked physical. He looked like someone who was pissed off that he's been in Providence the whole year. And I think you could take the next few games to see how he plays, to evaluate if we did trade one of these guys on the second line, can Poitras fill the void? And if Poitras fills the void until Higgins comes up, at least, or if he can stick it out through the rest of the year, I think he'd do it. But I think in the offseason, you're like, hey, you can get a first, which would make that Coyle trade even worse.
Can I just real quick? I mean, if we're talking about Casey Mittelstadt for a first round pick, that is a no fucking brainer.
Oh, 1000%.
I mean, I might have overthought it a bit in terms of trying to get a replacement in here with an eye towards the playoffs, but yeah, if you can get a first round pick for Casey Mittelstadt, like, there's no question, bro. Like, there's no question. Maybe that contract makes it hard, but we've seen how desperate teams are at the trade deadline.
Mhm.
We see, I mean, someone in contention last year sent a first round pick for Brandon Carlo. Like, you know what I mean? Someone did it for Scott Lawton. Well, I think it's been okay, but like, you know, if you maybe if Mittelstadt continues like this after the freeze, because he'll have some time, you know, to recover. He's not going to the Olympics. Maybe someone is desperate enough for that. Colorado again. That would be hilarious, man.
Because that would be, we would trade Coyle. If we trade Millsap for a first, it would be Coyle for a first, a second, and Zellers. That is just highway robbery. And I don't obviously obviously, like, you don't wanna trade away people, but with how well, I mean, we got a fourth for VL. With how well Sweeney's been hot on the trade market
He
recently.
has been, honestly. Yeah.
I would rather, trust him go through another deadline, making the moves that he thinks best for the team. I'll just trust him, and I think there's definitely some more guys on the team that can get sold off. I think Peak would be a prime candidate. Like, if you get
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
second for him, maybe a team's desperate for that because the way Aspro's been playing and Harris is coming back. I think Peak is kind of like a no brainer for me. The Middlestat and Arvidsson one, earlier in the year, you'd be like, they definitely gotta go. But now how they're playing so well, what kind of message does that send to the team?
Yeah.
If you trade Arvidsson like in March, how's the locker room going to react to that? Maybe if you have a replacement kind of in house, if Poitras been playing well, you bump him up, or you mint into the second line and keep Poitras on the third. But it will definitely be hard to. I don't know what kind of message that will send to the team if you trade one of those guys, late while they're still holding a wild card spot.
Yeah, I do wonder though if and I mean, Bruins management I think is pretty reactionary a lot of the time. But like if they just sit here and think like, look, Arvidsson, Mittelstadt, Peak, like they've been nice for us, but are they part of our future? Like when we start really contending again, because we think this is a good team. I think this is a playoff team. I don't think we're calling them cup contenders. I know, like you get in, anything can happen, right? But when we're like really ready to contend, because we do have a top 10 pick that's ready to, not ready, but like about to come into our system here in James Hagens. When we're ready to contend again, really in a year or two, are Viktor Arvidsson and Casey Mittelstadt part of that? Like, are they part of what that next edition of the Bruins is? And the answer is no, like they're not. I'm not saying that means they're going to trade those guys, but I wonder how much that comes into play when someone does offer something like a first round pick. I think if you're listening to offers like that, you got to be like, man, we got to strike while the iron's hot, even though, and it's a weird situation, I'll admit, because you're probably going to be going against these teams that are battling for postseason spots. It could be Detroit. It could be, whomever the fuck, right? Could be, New Jersey or Philadelphia, or one of these teams that's scratching and clawing and might find their way in. Washington, But I mean, if you get serious draft capital for those guys, I think you still got to take it. Because then Dan, you can get pretty flexible with your own draft capital. That's the other thing. You get a first round pick in here. Let's say it's a 27 first round pick. And you're still playing with your 2 first round picks for this year. That does make it a lot easier to shuck and jive and maybe bring in a big time name. Which you know what? Do we want to do the wild trade scenario here? Do we want to just do it right here? All right. So this is coming from Twitter, and this is coming from Jesse Dominguez, who does a lot of these on Twitter. But this one really caught my eye. We talked about Robert Thomas last week with the Blues, and the kind of player he is, point of game guys, done that in the past. Here's this. I mean, I couldn't even. This is like half the tweet, by the way, that fits on the screen. 3-team trade, and I'll just go with what the Bruins are giving up. So the Bruins would give up Matthew Poitras to the Kraken. They would give up their first round pick to St. Louis, as well as sending Mason Lowry to St. Louis. And in return, the Bruins would get Robert Thomas and St. Louis's 2027 fourth round pick. But let's just call it Robert Thomas, shall we? for Mason Lohrei, your first this year, and Matthew Poitras. Dan Conlon, put on your Don Sweeney mask. Would you do this?
100%. And my question is, I feel like this trade obviously was mocked up by a Bruins fan.
Yeah.
Like last week we were talking, Hagens for Thomas, and I'm like, if you're doing a trade, why do you start with you don't start with your best your best asset. But if you're giving up Lohrei, and your first Patra and Lohrei, you were just talking about being traded for Rasmus Anderson, and I wasn't too concerned with that. Patra, we have a lot of depth at center. We have a bunch of young guys. And Lohrei, we have a lot of defensemen right now, and it would kind of suck to give up on him. He's very good offensively, and he's still young, and he's done a lot better this year. He was a -43 last year. Now he's +6 or 7. So he's definitely improved from last year. So it'd be tough to give up on him. But if you're getting a guy like Robert Thomas, who's his contract isn't that bad. I think he's making $8 million until 2031, which isn't bad for a guy that puts up 80 points a year. So I think if you're getting that, I think it'd be a no-brainer. You're giving up a first-round pick, which is going to be the higher of the first-round picks
Yep.
this year. So that's kind of where I'm like, I don't know if they would want our pick. They would definitely want Toronto's. So if you keep on the Toronto's pick this year and keep Hagens in a Robert Thomas trade, I think that's just a very good trade for the Bruins, and one I would do. But I don't know if St. Louis would do that.
Yeah, and it's you're right. Like it's weird to say about a team that's this bad, but it is kind of tough to tell where St. Louis is at, because they did have that run last year. They made the playoffs, but they're bad, right? They're the Kyrous and the Thomases their names have been on the block quite a bit. So you're going to want that Toronto pick, like you said. And I wonder too, with the salary for Robert Thomas, is this the kind of deal where you're going to have to send Casey Mittelstadt out rather than, stat for a first or a second? This is probably the deal you're going to have to send him out for, because there's salary going there, or if we're talking about that, if we're talking about, Mittelstadt possibly going in this package, St. Louis is already looking at Toronto's pick rather than yours. They're probably going to want Pavel Zacha and not Casey Mittelstadt, right? Because he comes in at a bit of a lower number and he is easier to flip. So this would be great in theory, right? Like I'm taking this too. Like Lohrei, I do really like Lohrei, but the longer this goes on, I think the more you have to wonder, like, what are the odds he's a top pairing defenseman? And I know that's not the end all be all. You got to have 3 pairings, but like, that's what you're looking for, like a, young, cost controlled, kind of defenseman that you spend a draft pick on. And I don't know that he's going to be that. And Matt Poitras is a nice player. He's still too young to be like, oh, he's done. But Robert Thomas is a much better player. You know what I mean? That's where we're like, don't overthink it. And if you could get this done with your first round pick instead of Toronto's, I mean, twice on Sunday, like you're making this trade all the time. Yeah. I do wonder though, how the Bruins are going to look at their draft picks the closer we get to the trade deadline, because the other thing we're running into here, Dan, the problem that we're running into here is Toronto is too bad. Their panic meter is through the roof. That is a top 5 protected, which is pretty loosely protected considering. But with the way the Leafs are going right now, I think you have to wonder, Dan, if they are too bad. Like if the Bruins are going to be like, can you guys start winning some more games here?
They have been really bad. I'm actually I wouldn't say happy, but I saw they won yesterday, so I'm like, okay, they moved up a little bit. They're not
a couple of those, man.
Just get win 1 every 5 games, and we'll be happy. It is kind of concerning because we saw what happened last draft. Obviously, the Bruins, some teams hopped up into the top 5, so it can happen. Even if they're not in the top 5, they can still get it. So I'd be happy, like, if you're getting a 10th overall pick for, like, obviously people are like, oh, let's go for 6 or 7. That would be ideal scenario. But like realistically, if you got the 10th pick or 11th pick, that's something you do. But when that trade happens, you'd be like, that's
you get the
amazing.
10th pick and Fraser Minten, like
I think we're getting a
Vasek Bernard.
little aggressive and kind of greedy with how we want this draft pick to be. But if you end up between 8 to 12, realistically, like that's still very good considering what you gave up for it. So I do think there is. We saw what the Bruins did last year. The Bruins tanked really hard at the end
Yeah.
and still didn't end up with a top 5 pick. So it is hard to get a
That's
top
what
5
keeps
pick
me
in the
going,
NHL.
man. That's what keeps me going. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really hard
Of
to get a
course, the
top 5
Islanders got the
pick.
number 1 pick, but,
Yeah, we could have used that, but
yeah,
we
they
wouldn't have
did.
Hagens right now.
That's
But
right.
we would have Schaefer.
You only have Matthew Schaefer, damn it. Damn it.
But yeah, I think it's something to
Leafs?
keep an eye on,
What was the last time the
but
Leafs won the cup?
not this century.
Sorry.
But
This is for the kids. That one was for the kids.
oh man. But
What
yeah,
if
I think
I was
sorry,
gonna say,
you go.
what if they pull off like another number 7 pick and it just becomes like the Celtics, like back-to-back number 3 overall picks, and it starts a championship team? They could totally do that. James
Mhm.
Higgins, Tynan Lawrence, back-to-back number 7 overall. Who knows?
While we're on
Gavin
the
McKenna might fall to 7.
while we're on the topic of horrible Leafs trades, I was gonna ask
Oh,
you, do you think this will go down as the worst, biggest fleecing between Boston and Toronto? Because I'll bring up the Kessel trade and the Rask
uh-huh.
trade. Those are the other two. Do you think this will go down as it has the potential? Say they end up with the 10th pick.
Yeah. Okay.
Is this the biggest? You have to see how it plays out. Like we know how
Mhm.
Rask played out. We know how Sagan and Hamilton played out. Obviously, we don't know how Minton and the 10th pick would do and Vasek Bernard. But
Yeah.
do you think this can
Yeah.
be the worst one?
It could be. It could be. Right now, it's shaping up to be more like the Kessel one, I guess, because you're going to get 2 good young players out of it, like they did with Sagan and Hamilton. In this case, it'll be Fraser Minten and whomever they get with this draft pick, should they use it. And you honestly didn't get enough out of Sagan and Hamilton. Like Sagan helped you win a cup as a rookie, and he was big in the conference finals and all that, but like you didn't really get enough out of those guys. But it was 2 guys that weren't playing for Toronto. And the Rask one, because like I see this and I see this trade developing, this Fraser Minten thing, and like I'm just like, man, this is going to be one of the best of my lifetime potentially, with that first round pick coming. But we do have to remember, like Tuukka Rask is a Hall of Fame goalie, like he's legit, he's a Hall of Famer, like he's that good. And you got him for the last legs of Andrew Raycroft. Like Raycroft was nothing with Toronto, and you ended up getting a Hall of Famer out of it. So it's going to be tough to one up that one. We might have to wait a while, but if you get another like young stud with this draft pick, and I know Hagens isn't a part of this, but you then have Hagens, Minten, and this other top 10, top 12 pick who's a foundational piece of your franchise, like that is humongous. Like that is, we're talking about a potential, Stanley Cup contending team sometime in the near future. And you've got 2 pieces of Leafs property that are making up that team.
And Alex Steves.
Potentially Vasek Bernard and Alex Steves, who's just ripping it up, man. So that's where you're like, team wise, this could end up becoming the best deal that these 2 have made. Tuukka's the Hall of Famer, and that's great, but the Leafs could be contributing multiple pieces to the next great Bruins team on this one trade for a guy that, again, fans like Brandon Carlo and everything, but I think we all agreed that this was not Brandon Carlo anymore. Like we weren't like so sad to see him go. That's what's crazy.
He was a very good teammate, and you could tell he was respected in the locker room. So I think that aspect of it was kind of tough, but if he wasn't physical, he didn't contribute offensively. Like I think no one really has missed him.
Those guys are expendable, man. You got Andrew
very
Peeke.
expendable, very
And
expendable.
like Andrew Peeke was giving you just as much as Carlo did the last 2 years. Sorry, it's true.
But yeah, I think the Sagan trade, the Kessel trade, gets a lot of the attention. But I do think the Rask trade was definitely better than the Kessel trade. Like you said, they got a Hall of Famer, they got a Vezina winner, who brought you to 2 Stanley Cup Finals appearances.
Mhm.
Andrew Raycroft, he played 2 years with the Leafs. His first year with the Leafs, he played 71 games. Like, imagine that in this economy. But they basically ran him out of town. He went on to play a few more years with other teams, but you got basically 1 year out of Raycroft, and you traded away a Vezina winner, Hall of Famer. That's by far the biggest one right now. With the Sagan trade, Kessel was a good player with the Leafs. That he played there for 6
Yeah.
years. He averaged 30 goals, 60 points. Like, they did get a return on that.
Made the
Um,
playoffs.
Made the playoffs, lost to the Bruins. So they did get something for it. It's not like they got 1 year Raycroft and Kessel. They
Yeah.
did get contributions from him. And then Sagan and Doug Hamilton were ran out of town after 3 years by Cam Neely. So I think this trade has the possibility to go up there with Rask. You're getting Fraser Minten, who we really don't know what his ceiling is yet. I think Tanner Jeannot summed it up perfectly. He's getting better every day. So we thought he was a third line center at first. Now he's a second line center. If you get Brandon Carlo for a top 6 forward, and if you with that 10th pick or so, you can get a top 4 D man or another top 6 forward, I think that will be up there with Rask and could be better than Rask, but we'll have to wait and see on that.
And what's crazy too with Minten, we talk about his defensive ability, his hockey IQ, and all that. Like, what's crazy about the short-term future of that is Minten is responsible enough that you can have Hagens on his wing this year. Like, when he comes up, it's more likely Zacha, right? More likely that. But I think Minten is responsible enough that you can do that. That you can put him on the wing with Fraser Minten centering a line. And then I'd say probably Jeannot, because you want someone with some beef, right? You want someone who can stand up for these guys. But that is an ultimate compliment of Fraser Minten. He's like 2 years older than James Hagens. He's 21, and you're like, yeah, but he's responsible enough. You could put Hagens on his wing, which is crazy. So yeah, this should go down as one of the great fleecings the Leafs have ever had on their side, and possibly the Bruins have ever had on their side. And they've had some pretty good ones. It's going to be tough to beat out the Esposito, Cashman, Stanfield, Cam Neely for Barry Peterson. That was pretty good. Yeah, it's gonna be tough to beat those out, but it's definitely shaping up that way. And boy, do the Leafs suck, man. The Leafs stink, man. They've won 2 of their last 10. They had their worst 9-game stretch in terms of goals against. They gave up 45 goals in a 9-game stretch for the first time since 1992. Like, I need to bring it back up one more time. Like, the panic meter is this bad for the Leafs right now.
And
Like,
they're in
they
a tough
suck.
situation.
They're
They're
bottom
they're
of
in a
this
situation
division.
where they're in a situation where it's, do we sell and try to tank and get a top 5, or do we try to go for it since we don't have our first round pick this year, most likely? So they got to make some tough decisions soon. I've heard some names being thrown out there. Morgan Riley, I think some Leafs fans want him gone. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at the deadline, because that will give Bruins fans a good indication of where that pick may be. If they do try to sell, I mean, that's just a dangerous game. I think the Bruins fans want them just to stand pat because they're doing perfectly fine right now in our eyes with what team they have. But I'm very curious what they're going to decide to do, because they don't have their first round picks the next 2 years. Like, it's not looking great. Their future is not looking great. So do you try to sell some people off to kind of recoup the picks that you give up, or I don't know, but it's going to be tough to get a
The
top
other
5
problem
pick
is you
with
don't have
how
any
bad.
prospects. That's the other problem. So what it's going to look like if the Leafs do that is, maybe not trading a franchise icon like the Bruins did last year, but the way they get a return is going to look like what the Bruins had last year. A couple of draft picks, but also Casey Mittelstadt, Marat Husnadinov, guys like that. Who else they bring in last year? The deadline. I mean, just for lack of a better term, nobodies. And we love, this is a pro Marat podcast. But we didn't know much about him when he got in here. So yeah, Leafs, man, are always a part of the story, and they will continue to be a part of the story as long as Fraser Minten is here, and as long as that draft pick still belongs to the Boston Bruins this year. They will be part of the story. Let's talk Matthew Poitras, shall we? He made his season debut, the other night against Philadelphia. You said it earlier. Looked good. Didn't provide any points, but looked good. Looked solid out there for a guy who's playing his first game in late January. But he is a very interesting case here, Dan, because your center position has gotten much better depth than you thought it was going to have last year. Don't know if he's big enough to be on the wing long term. So he becomes a bit of a trade piece. We saw that Robert Thomas one projection earlier, Matthew Poitras going away. Do you think that him coming up in late January was, out of necessity, or do you think this is a good way for the Bruins to showcase what they have to potential suitors?
I'm going to go with D, all the above.
That's fair. That's fair.
But it's interesting. Poitras definitely got a taste of the NHL.
They do need him. Yeah.
They do need him right now with the injuries. But I think Poitras is an interesting case where he may be looking to move on too. I'm not sure if he's been down there all year and he's had a taste of the NHL the past 2 years as well. I'm not sure. Sturm says he likes him. I'm not sure how true that is, but Sturm is pretty honest. So Poitras also switched agents, I think a month ago, so he could be looking for a nice, change of scenery. So I think with how well they've done with their center position this year, you got good production from Fraser Minten, a lot better than you thought you would. Higgins has progressed pretty well. I definitely think he's expendable. You have Dean, who is having a great year.
Dean Pot.
He's definitely expendable, but right now you need him because of the injuries. So I could see him. If it depends, like you don't just trade him to get rid of him. Like you don't need to get rid of him. So I think if a good, veteran player or someone that you feel like can be a part of the core is available, like someone like Robert Thomas, Patra's definitely going to be in that trade or someone you'd want to offer. But I do think his future with the Bruins is definitely not looking great with how well other players are playing right now. Their center position prospects are very good. So we'll see how he plays the next few games. He's going to have his opportunity. So we'll see how that goes. But I do think they will be trying to trade him at this deadline if it could get them someone that will contribute. But if not, you could hold on to him, put him down in Province again. Like there's no rush on this. Like this is like
right.
He didn't do a trade request or anything like that.
That's where the Bruins are in a good spot, right? I mean, you're talking about this is a 21-year-old. He's only about to turn 22 next month. Like you are in a good spot. Like he is still a highly regarded prospect. And I think you'll see that if they do make a trade, that he is still highly regarded around the league, not like as a generational guy or anything like that, but like a good, but creative potential top 6 center as a very young player, someone that you can still develop into your system, whatever team he goes to. But also to your point, they don't have to. They've got, it's actually a lot like the Red Sox right now with their pitching. Like you don't have to trade these guys. You've got a lot of them. You probably at this point next year, you'll probably have too many centers. But that's not the worst thing in the world. You can make a hockey trade, which we've seen Don do 1 or 2 times. Or you can do kind of the bigger deal, like for someone like Robert Thomas. I think there's so much you can do with that. And, again, good draft capital coming in the next 2 seasons potentially, and good prospects coming through the NCAA ranks. I wouldn't be stunned at all if Matthew Poitras is traded. I think in some respects he is still your best trade piece. Like obviously Zacha is a great trade piece, but I don't know if you're doing that if you're making the playoffs, right? I don't think you're doing that. Mittelstadt and Arvidsson, nice veteran trade pieces, but if you're talking about young guys, it's Poitras and it's Lowry. Those are the 2 you can trade. And, if you can get a defenseman in the first round this year, which I think is what the Bruins will be looking for, then maybe you're okay parting with these guys. Do you still see, with the rise of Fraser Minten and picking Higgins in the draft, do you still see Poitras being a part of their future the way we were looking at him at this point last year?
Really depends what they do, because you have Minten and Higgins who will be locks for your lineups.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe next year, hopefully they're both in the lineup. But what are you going to do with Zacha? What are you going to do with Mittelstadt? how is that going to play out? If you trade Zaka in the deadline, or if you trade him in the offseason, then that opens up, a spot for him. But I think it really depends what you do with the other guys. If you sign Zaka to an extension, which we've heard some rumors of, we've heard trade rumors, we've heard extension rumors. So I think it really depends what they do with Zaka, because obviously you have Lindholm locked up for the next 6 years or so. If you extend Zaka, who has gone on record saying I want to be a center, but he does play wing when you need him. So I think it really depends what you do with Zaka. And if Zaka's there, I don't think you have a need for Poitras. And if Poitras can get you, a right shot defenseman, I think that's something you definitely search for, whether it's this deadline or in the off season. But I
Whoa. They got Henry Jokiharju under contract. Dan.
Olympian Henry Jokiharju. But yeah, if you want to upgrade from Jokiharju, maybe you throw Poitras in a deal.
That's tough to do. I want to know. This is very random, and I'll get back to the Poitras thing in a second. But I want to know about that Leafs fan who said that they should trade Carlo for 4 first-round picks. I want to know how that's going. Was it Seattle? I think he said get Seattle's 4 first-round picks for Carlo. How many first-round picks went in the Quinn Hughes trade? I think just one.
Yeah. Only one.
So you want to multiply that by 4. I'm just wondering how he's doing.
Start high, start at 4, and then maybe settle for 2.
Bro, I don't know if you could get 1/4, let alone 4 ones, but here we are.
If they trade Carlo, that would be pretty bad. I'm curious how his value has changed in a year. If they got like a second rounder for him, I mean, I'm not sure what they're gonna do, but I'm curious what his value is.
And I do I feel like I'm dumping on Carlo. Like I do like him as a player, but like, what does he give a contending team? Last year, the Leafs thought they were getting a physical defenseman with an edge because that's what they needed. And we're like, bro, Brandon Carlo is not that, and he's never really been that. He was a good defensive defenseman, but he's not that, bro. And so like, what is he's not going to give you anything offensively. He's not much of a puck mover. He's not going to give you big hits. He's just going to be slightly better than the average guy at preventing teams from scoring. That's kind of it. So I don't even know what Brandon Carlo brings to a team right now, but that might be harsh. Anyway, back to Poitras in these centers, because Elias Lindholm, Pavel Zacha, both out right now. And so how about this, Dan? Your top 3 centers are 22-year-old, 23-year-old Marat Husnudinov.
23.
Then you've got 23. There you go. I've got it written down here.
23 and 115 days.
There you go. Thank you. 23-year-old Marat Husnudinov, 21-year-old Fraser Minten, and 21-year-old Matthew Poitras. That is nuts. Obviously, that's not your long term. Zacha and Lindholm are still under contract and everything, but you are going to add James Higgins to that mix. Remember how dire the center position looked last year?
Oh man, I miss David Krejci so much.
Like, oh my God. And I'm not saying like these are Bergeron and Krejci reincarnated necessarily, but you've got options at center. Like, I did not think that was going to happen when Charlie Coyle was playing first line center in 24. And he had a pretty good year, to be fair. He actually had a career high in points. But like, I did not think that 2 years later, with the way the Bruins operate, you'd be in a pretty damn good position at that position.
These young guys. And it just goes to show how well the past year has gone for the Bruins. Minten, trade deadline acquisition. Marat, trade deadline acquisition.
Yep.
James Higgins, you got him because you tanked and traded Marchand and 5 other people. But that just goes to show that was all done within the last year. Like all I mean, I'm talking about Higgins and Minten and Marat, but Poitras too. He's been one of our top prospects for a while. So I'm just happy he's getting his time now. Like I think we remember in November, everyone was like holding pitchforks because Sweeney wouldn't call up Poitras and myself. We kind of forgot about it for a while just because they were playing so well. But now, like everything that we wanted earlier in the season is actually like, we got Poitras up in the NHL. Now let's see how that goes. So I think we just got to sit back and see how he plays and see if he can be part of the future, or if he could just be a good trade deadline acquisition for another team.
What do you think about Elias Lindholm this year? Slept
I
on?
think he I think he slept on. I think everyone just hates the contract because at the time
Yep.
it was a big contract, and he didn't have a great year last year. So I think people just have made up their minds about him already, and they will just hate on him no matter what he does. So he is playing a lot better this year. It's just he doesn't have the best 5-on-5 stats, which people just hold against him. So
Yep.
I'm not a big I try not to hate. He's gonna be with us for the long term, so I think you gotta give it an open mind and not just hate him for 7 years. But I do think he's kinda underrated this year. I know his 5-on-5 stats aren't great, but he has had a good year so far, and he does a lot of things that don't show up on the stat sheet. So uh, he's with us whether you like it or not. So might as well try to not hate him.
Well, also, like, we've raved about Pavel Zacha this year,
Mhm.
and Zacha's having a good year. He's on pace for 60 points, right? They're level on points, Lindholm and Zacha. And I know that Lindholm plays on the first line, but Zacha's line has been great the last month. They've been just as productive, just about. And Lindholm's played 10 less games than Zacha has this year. So I think he's pretty slept on, including by me, by the way. Like it doesn't help that he's this, really good defensive forward and his plus minus is even. But so is Zacha, and he's a -5. So you know what I mean? Like it's maybe you look a little deeper into the numbers. He is 32 points behind David Pastrnak for points on this team. Pasternak's first with 69. Very nice. And then Geeky with 50, and then it goes Lindholm at 37. He's been, a good penalty killer for you. He's provided some power play oomph. That's kind of where a lot of his points are coming from, like or at least his goals, Dan. Because you talk about the 5-on-5 numbers. That's what it comes down to. It's like it's not as good. It's not good enough for a guy making 7.75 a year, probably, right? His 5-on-5 numbers, but this is a very useful piece of your hockey team right now. And he's not going to get a lot of the plaudits. He's not going to get a lot of the spotlight. But to just be steady and not be a guy who's trashed every time he's brought up, I think that's a big part of this team right now.
Yeah, and those are two big signings last offseason. Zadorov didn't have. You could debate how his season was last year, but I think people are just still stuck in the past on these signings where we did give them a lot of money last year and they did terrible last year, the Bruins. So I think just people haven't gotten over that, and I'd rather root for Lindholm to have a good Bruins career than just hate on him until it's gonna be. I don't think you're trading that contract at all. So it's kind of like what I said with Swayman too. Like people hated Swayman after last year, and whether you liked him or not, no one's going to take on that contract if he plays bad the rest of his career. So it's one of those things where let's just focus on the good things. And he's going to be the center on your first line maybe for a few more years, or maybe Higgins takes over that spot and you bump Lindholm to second or third line, which is not what you want to be paying a guy $7 million to do. But I do think he's very slept on, and I sleep on him once in a while. But I'm starting to see some of the things he does. If you watch the games, there's a lot of things he does that don't register on the score sheet.
We don't need to sleep with him, but we just can't be sleeping on him anymore. I think that's a good way to
Exactly
close the book on Elias Lindholm. I do want to hear what the fans think in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or tweet at us. Tweet at us. Find us on TikTok. Find us there as well. Last thing before we get out of here, Dan, we've got 2 more games before the Olympic freeze. One of them is tonight, Stadium Series against Tampa, and then, which thank God it's actually cold down there. How about that? And then Thursday, they take on the Florida Panthers down in Sunrise. So it would have been great for some of these Bruins guys, like who weren't going to the Olympics. Like you go down to Florida, all right, it's going to be nice weather, and then you can just like stay there or go somewhere else tropical for a couple of weeks. Instead, it's 20-something degrees down there right now. But Tampa, one of the hottest teams in the league, man. Like this Atlantic Division is absolutely on fire, and Tampa is still at the top. They need to keep winning, and they keep winning. Florida, surprising. I guess not surprising in terms of their injuries, but still struggling. They're the only team, or they're the team immediately ahead of the Leafs in terms of the Atlantic Division standings. And I can't believe that I'm going to say this, but Florida on Thursday night, I am going to ask the Bruins politely, okay? I'm going to ask Tanner Jeannot, Mark Kastelik, Nikita Zadorov, none of whom are American, but to please take it easy on Matthew Tkachuk. I can't believe I'm saying it, Dan, but it's the last game before the Olympic break. I would really ask Florida not to play him, but Nikita Zadorov, please do not put him through the glass, please.
I mean, I'm not sure. Early in the year, we saw how much injuries Team USA had. It was crazy. Like, I think half their roster was not playing in the NHL. But yeah, I think Florida is going to try to play Kachuk because they're currently out of the playoffs right now.
Yes,
if I had to guess, but
Fuck.
yeah, we are getting to the point where it's like, okay, McAvoy's playing great now. McAvoy's playing maybe the best hockey of his career right now with how he's been playing. So it's nice to see
and
him hitting his stride.
to be fair, we've not talked a lot about McAvoy. That's going to need to be a big part of next week's episode because you're absolutely right. Like he has been awesome this year. And I was a little skeptical of him earlier this year, but he's been great. Sorry, go ahead. We need to get that out.
It's the bubble. I think it's the bubble. I think we keep it throughout the bringing to the playoffs.
What do you have to prove? Keep it, man.
Keep the bubble. Maybe bring it to the Olympics. But McAvoy's playing great hockey. It's crazy how I feel like it's February 1st right now, dude. Like the Olympics are in less than around 10 days.
The opening ceremonies are less than a week, but the games aren't for a week and a half.
But yeah, it's an important 2 games in Florida coming up. If you could split, you get one, that's kind of okay. Like you could either beat Tampa's number 1 in the division right now. If you can kind of make a statement win against them, that means you could play with the best. Also with the Panthers game, they're behind you right now. I think they're 6 or 7 points behind you. So if you could bury them a little bit deeper, right now you're the second wild card spot. So that's the team they have their eyes on. So
maybe this is too like Disney movie kind of thing, but like don't give Florida hope right before the break. Like, it's a team that has been borderline unstoppable the last 3 years, specifically the last 2. Like they've got some guys coming back from injury. They got some guys who might not be on, playing in the Olympics because of it. So like, don't give them a sliver of hope. Like don't lose 5-2 on their home ice right before they go in the freeze and they get everybody not everybody, but get a bunch of guys healthy. Like don't squander that. Don't give them that hope. That's a team that I do think that even though they're down at the bottom, the Panthers are, with how good the Atlantic is, how open it is, you're going to be scratching and clawing with them. No pun intended, for a playoff spot. So that's from if I'm Marco Sturm, I'm going full like fucking Herb Brooks. Like, don't give them an edge, man. Like, do not. You were born to be hockey players, okay? Do not give them some hope here. That's a nice and for a lot of the Bruins guys who aren't going to the Olympics, like, end this on a high note, man. Like, step on their throat. This team is not as good as you right now. I know that they've got the banners above you, but let's step on their throat for this game. So, anyway.
In football terms, they're the Kansas City Chiefs, and exactly what the Chiefs did this year. They played terrible the whole year, and then you just gotta, put them out of their misery. Whether it's Mahomes getting injured or just the Chiefs doing bad. But I compare the Panthers to the Chiefs, and I find it funny how there's the world's biggest stage of sports is this Sunday, and our team's playing it, and we mentioned the Red Sox more than them this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be weird this year if the Panthers don't make the playoffs, and I'm not saying they probably will make a push at some point. But if the Bruins make the playoffs and they don't have to play the Maple Leafs or Panthers in the first or second rounds, that's something new.
It'd be less fun, but it would be a nice change of pace.
It's nice to get that win against the Leafs.
And hey,
but
last time the Patriots won the Super Bowl, Bruins went to the final.
That's all. Yeah.
Last thing I want to ask you, very last thing. Have the Stadium Series jerseys grown on you at all?
I haven't really paid too much attention to them. I
Good.
saw when they came out, and I was like, I'll watch it.
Haven't given it much of a thought.
I'll watch it when I see it tonight. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really like the bee with the it's like a flame going through it. I'm like, that's just
It's
not
like
mine.
I think it's supposed to be like a bear mark, like claw.
Yeah, it looks like the Calgary Flames, but the claw
You also
mark thing
just
is
could have done more with that. Like you could have done something cool with that, and they didn't. They decided not to. They just put a bee over it.
I saw women's pads though. Gives me Marty Turco
Oh,
vibes.
oh
Marty
my
Turco.
god, dude! Yes, the Marty Turco pads that he
Are
probably
back.
brought with him from Michigan 15 years before. Oh my god, I forgot about the Marty Turco pads. 2012, bro. Jesus. That's a good way to end it. That's a good way to end it right there. Find us on Twitter. Find us on TikTok. Find us here every week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. That's Dan Conlon. I'm Cam Stewart. This is the Garden Level Podcast. Damn it.